Hi, this is Mac from Mac's List. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about my new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. I've been helping job seekers find meaningful, well-paying work since 2001, and now I put all my best advice into one easy-to-use guide. My book shows you how to make your resume stand out in a stack of applications, where you can find the hidden jobs that never get posted, and what you need to do to ace your next job interview. Get the first chapter now for free. Visit maxlist.org/anywhere. This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm Mac Pritchard, your host and publisher of Mac's List. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ben Forstag, Becky Thomas, and Jessica Black from the Mac's List team. This week, we're talking about top blunders to avoid when changing careers. Many of us will change careers several times. Doing this, however, isn't easy. In fact, too many workers stay in jobs they don't like, or they make a change and discover it isn't what they expected. Our guest expert this week is Kathy Caprino. She says people who struggle with switching careers make 5 or more blunders. We talk about these mistakes and how to avoid them later in the show. The first step in switching careers is knowing what you want to do next. Ben has found a website you can use to find careers, and it's based on your personal and professional interests. He tells us more in a moment. You want to move across the country to a new city. How do you get your resume noticed without making a connection in person? That's our question of the week, and it comes from Seth Richardson in New York City. Becky shares her advice shortly. As always, let's check in with the Mac's List team, and our topic this week is the top blunders that people make when switching careers. Kathy's got a list of 5, and she has some others in reserve she'll want to talk about. But these are common mistakes that keep us from either changing sectors or maybe we're doing it in a way that's more painful than it needs to be. And I think everybody around the table's struggled with switching careers or sectors. And I'm curious, what have been some of your biggest challenges when you've done that?
I'll start.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest problem for me is there comes a point in every career or job trajectory where you realize you don't want to be doing that anymore. But the challenge I've had is like not knowing exactly what I want to do. Like knowing I want to do something different, but not knowing what exactly that is.
That was my struggle too.
Yeah, and so it's like getting down to just having a clear goal of what you want to be doing, because it's really hard to sell yourself to another employer or to transition to a new industry when you don't really have a clear idea of where you're trying to go.
Yeah, I agree. I had a lot of that struggle, especially early on in my career, knowing that I've talked a little bit about this before, but I did a lot of different jobs, and that was great because I wanted to just try a bunch of things and see what worked and where I had some strengths and where I, kind of helped me understand. That helped me get clear on my goals, which is really the long way to go. It took a while, but that was really the only way for me to be able to do it. I have to do it by doing it.
Yeah, you're almost an experiential learner, aren't you, Jessica?
Yes, I am. Plus, I like to just, gain that experience. And I like to do it all, as you guys probably know, but I like to do it all. So I wanted to just continue to gain the knowledge and all of that. But over the course of my early career history, I learned what worked and what didn't, and what I wanted to keep pursuing and what I maybe didn't want to pursue. Even though I enjoyed the things that I did, I found out there were some things that I wasn't gravitating towards as much, or those types of things, fundraising being one of them. So lots of things like that helped me gain where I was getting my energy, or figure out where I was getting my energy, and where my strengths and my skills lay. I don't know. The past tense of lie. But yeah, so that was helpful.
I feel like I don't think those are blunders, though, right? It's like you have to sort of go through that stuff to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. Like, I sort of had the same thought when we were talking about this, like, blunder. Like, I don't know if it's an error necessarily. Like, I think it does take time, but you also have to just, like, go through stuff, especially when you're changing careers. Like, it's not going to just go, like, overnight. You know? You have to sort of do it in stages.
Yeah, I think it's a really normal thing, and I'm guessing most people go through it. I think the blunder is thinking that you can force your way through it anyway, right? That you can can make other people believe that, like, you're really passionate about this, even if you haven't really figured it out on your side.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's a fine line there, but I think that it is like, you do have to sort of figure out what you want to be doing, but know that it doesn't take it takes time and effort to get there.
Yeah, and I guess I will say maybe more along what you're trying to say of the blunders side of things is when, and this wasn't even, I was still sort of in my process of figuring it all out, but I don't know. I've talked a lot about this as well, that I'm an eternal optimist. And so I would always think there would be times where I'd be like, oh no, I figured it out, and I'm going to do this now, and this is what I'm going to do, and it's all going to work out, and here's my plan. And then thinking that it would be an easy switch to just, make that transition when I didn't have concrete experience in that other thing that I thought I wanted to do. And then just kind of going in and being like, hey, I'm great at this, and I can do it, and kind of being that young person that's just thinks that they have, the world around their, I don't know, the world at their feet, I guess is the word. But, and that, all the doors are open, and you just go in and have enthusiasm, and you can just make it happen if you just, try hard enough. And that doesn't work, it's, sometimes it does, but that's not the only thing that works. So you do have to make those connections, and you have to, put in the work and show that you are capable of making it happen. And so there were some times where I don't know if heartbroken is the right word, but definitely like had some dreams dashed, thinking that I was just going to waltz in and, have everything solved for me. But that was a big learning process too, because eventually I learned that those jobs that I had in my head that I thought I was wanting weren't actually what I wanted. But, it's one of those.
Well, I think a lot of people learn by doing, just as you do, Jessica. I think that's a very common learning style. And I think also, to Becky's point, when Ben and you talked about the challenges of figuring out what you want to do, that's a common problem that we all face. And I know when Kathy's thinking about blunders in switching careers or sectors, she's got some very specific things in mind, and we're going to dig into those.
Yeah, that'll be good to hear.
Yeah, I will say in my own case, I've shared the same challenge that you and Ben mentioned, which is figuring out what to do next, and I got stuck several times in trying to do that. And there are ways, and we've talked a lot about this on the show, about how to get clear about your goals, and informational interviews, networking, and self-assessment are part of that. The other thing that surprised me when I switched from the nonprofit to the private sector, it was just adjusting to the culture of working inside a large corporation. I wasn't prepared for that, and it's
a big change.
Yeah, it is. I would encourage people to consider that before making that leap.
Yeah, good.
Well, terrific. Well, let's turn to you, Ben, because you're out there every week exploring the internet on behalf of our listeners, looking for those tools, books, and websites that people can use in their job search and careers. So what have you found for us this week?
So this week I've got a resource to help folks who are having that problem that Jessica and I talked about, of not really knowing what you want to do next. Again, we all get stuck in, I've always been an accountant, or I've been in law for the last 20 years, and like they can't think beyond what they've been doing, even if they're unhappy in it. So I found this really nice.
If you don't mind if I interrupt, the flip side that I had was too many interests.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like being spoiled by abundance or something, right? Like that's a good thing to have, but it's really hard to taking all those interests and focus them down.
Right.
So
sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. So I found this resource online. It's called the Career Cluster Interest Survey, and it comes from the Minnesota State University system and their CareerWise program. Now, I'm guessing this is something that they developed for their own students, but it is open to the public, and the URL we'll have in the show notes because it's another one of these real long URLs. But the way this works is, everyone has a different way to describe themselves and what they like to do and their interests and their goals and things like that. So everyone has a different way to describe themselves and what they like to do. This survey lets you rate the activities you enjoy and your personal qualities and even subjects that you enjoyed in school. And then you can see what career clusters are a match for your interests. It's a list of 152 yes/no questions about specific interests, activities, personal education, things like that. That's a lot of questions, but it only takes about 10 minutes because all you're doing is checking off boxes for traits that relate to you. And at the end of the survey, you see a list of career clusters that are a good match for your interest. Now, one of the reasons I really like this tool was because it gives you like a cluster of careers. It's not like a straight line saying you must be a graphic designer or you will be a symphony composer, right? Those can be really narrow and sometimes they just completely miss the mark. What you get in this survey is like a cluster of like 6 or 7 general careers that might suit your temperament. And from there, you can then drill down into specific careers within that cluster of things you might want to think about. And I think this is just a nice way to start that winnowing process of whether you don't know where you want to start or where you want to move to, or if you have too many interests like Jessica here and like you need to just kind of winnow that down. I think this is a really nice tool for doing that. So again, it's the Career Cluster Interest Survey. That's a mouthful. And we'll have the URL in the show notes.
So I've got to ask the question that I expect is on the minds of some of our listeners, Ben. What did you learn about yourself in answering the 152 questions?
You're supposed to be a managing director.
I'm supposed to be a graphic designer or lead a symphony.
Symphony.
No, I think it kind of pegged me right. I mean, I don't know many people who like close their eyes and dream of a management job, but I'm happy with my job, and it said like this is a career area you might want to investigate. There is some flexibility here, right? Because it's also asking about like personal interests outside of the professional space, because those two fields of your life definitely overlap. And so, it was things like sports agent was one of the careers that came up there.
Nice.
I could see that. You're a big sports
fan. For the Cleveland Indians.
Yeah. Or, like law, which, I
think you considered it one time.
I broke my grandmother's heart by not becoming a lawyer. So like it gives you a nice wide array of things. And I guess I could see myself in those careers, but I'm pretty happy where I am right now.
Okay.
That's awesome. It sounds like a really cool tool. I'm definitely going to use it.
Great. Well, I will check that out too. And I'm also reminded of the latest season of The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix. She took an assessment like this. And
that's crossing guard.
Yeah.
I love
so good.
that show.
It's so good.
The crossing guard test that she does, and she takes the truck. She's like, "Come on in."
Right.
And she dies, and they're like, "You win." Oh, it was so good. That was probably a spoiler. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I think people were waiting on bated breath to
it's been out for months.
Watch the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which everybody should watch. It's so good.
Yeah,
it's a good show, and tools like this are really useful to have because people do get stuck either, as you said, Jessica, figuring out exactly what to do next or to sort out among competing interests.
Yeah.
I would just throw in there that, and I think most people know this, like in your heart, like you've got a gut feeling about what feels right and what doesn't, about what you want to be doing. So I don't know anyone who would take one of these tests and like the answer comes out and just feels completely wrong and they run with it anyway. That's as bad as listening to your grandmother and going off and getting a law degree that you didn't want. But so I think this is just a good way to kind of reaffirm things that might be in the back of your mind, even if they're not conscious thoughts.
Well, I will also, in response to that, I think that is absolutely true, but it's also if you're not clear about your own, if you are sort of on the fence and you're not decisive enough to decide which traits you feel like are accurate for you, it can come out skewed. It can, if you give sort of a wide variety of personal interests or whatever, it may not be able to be honed in. So be very honest and be very, do a little bit of self-assessment beforehand and be in the right mindset to do it. Because, I don't know, in college I took a personality, like a Myers-Briggs quiz or whatever, my freshman year of college, and it came out completely different than what I actually am because I wasn't clear about, who I was. And so I was, answering things that I thought that I should answer rather than what I actually was. And so that really, it made a big difference. Not that I made any decisions based on that personality test, but it definitely, now that I know myself a lot better, it's interesting to have that realization. Anyway, that's a long story.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Jessica. And let's turn to you, our listeners, because Becky is here to answer one of your questions. So, Becky, what's in the mailbag this week?
So this week's listener question comes from Seth Richardson from New York City.
Hi, this is Seth from New York City, and I am in the process of relocating to Portland. Can you give me some advice on how to get my resume noticed from across the country when I can't always be there in person to make the face-to-face connection?
So this is actually interesting because I met Seth in person. He was in the building meeting with career coach and friend of the podcast, Aubrey DeClercq, and she was helping him sort of like get connected and meet with folks here in town. He was like doing a little informational interview tour spree as he was getting ready to move here. I think he was moving in the fall, and so he was just really trying to get his network built and came in and we were chatting a little bit and I was like, you have a listener question. Let's record it real quick. So he was really sweet and great and we've connected since then. So thanks again, Seth, for doing that for me. And we chatted a little bit about this, but I hear this from a lot of other people too. Just sort of, I'm trying to move to the city. I'm really excited about living there, but I want to try to get connected and hopefully get a job before I move. And so I had some tips for Seth that I wanted to share with everyone else too. So he asked specifically about resume. So like, how do you get your resume to stand out? And I think that there's a couple of tactical things that you can do. And one that we talked about was removing your current address from your resume. You don't have to list that anymore. I feel like it's not really super relevant for employers. When I was trying to move to Portland and getting a job, I actually put my friend's Portland address down just to be like, I'm in Portland. Yeah, totally. I was like definitely planning to move, so it wasn't too,
No, like, that used to be pretty common
white
practice
lies,
too.
yeah.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So that's something to think about. And you could even just put the city that you're looking to move to and have a plan to move there. Just to say that you're in that city or you will be soon. And also, when you're applying for jobs, try to, be as open and sort of honest about your story as you can. Really try to draw that employer in with the story of your excitement and your passion for this new city that you're moving to, how you're already plugged into that city and you're moving at this date. You'll be there. You'll be ready to work at this date. And you're totally, fully excited about this position and the city. Don't try to hide it, because I think that, if you are planning to move and you've got that date down, there's no reason to, and I think you can sort of use that to your advantage, that you're fresh, into the city and you're excited and you're totally ready to jump in with both feet.
Yeah, and they'll find out anyway, so you might as well just be upfront about it. I like that.
Use it as a tool.
Yeah, I like that too, because if you don't address why you're moving and when, people will
They'll
assume
fill in the
you're
blanks
fishing.
with weird stuff. So just own that story and just make it as sort of compelling as you can. Because it is exciting. You're in this new phase, and they can be a part of that, and you've got a lot of energy and all that stuff. I know that's true for Seth. And then I was also, there's a lot of other things you can do. Besides just trying to make your resume stand out, starting to network is a huge thing. In most cities, you have to build a network in order to sort of get in with that, whatever industry you're in. So let's see, Oh, so use people you already know to get introduced to new folks. It's really helpful to sort of make a short list of companies you want to target, and then use anyone you're connected to see if they know anybody, and try to get some more formal informational interviews scheduled. And then if you can, go visit that city, schedule some of those informational interviews for in person, and also try to attend as many networking events as you can within the days that you're going to be there. Just really get in front of the people in the city that already are connected and have great jobs. They're going to be able to help you out a lot. So, and sometimes it's a matter of just moving, and you're going to have to network your way into a job, within a couple of months of moving, and just sort of like take that risk, because it can be scary. But I think, it is a challenge before you move to land that job, but there are a lot of things that you can do. So try all those things, do your due diligence, and if worse comes to worse, move here and hustle your way into a job as soon as you can. And yeah, that's kind of as far as I can go with my advice. Anything I'm missing here, guys?
Great. I'd also add that it behooves you to really explain how you could interview for the job remotely. Don't leave it up to the hiring manager to figure that out.
Okay.
Be real upfront in your application or your cover letter saying, I'm in New York City. I know you're in Portland. I'm happy to do a Skype interview. I'm happy to do a phone interview. And if we feel like it's a good fit after that, I'm happy to fly out for an interview.
That's a good point.
And I know some people worry about who's going to pay for that flight out? I would say don't worry about that until the issue emerges.
You have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, just try to put all the barriers out of the way so that you can have that conversation. And it may well be after the first Skype call, you're not interested in the job anyway.
Yeah.
So,
but showing your willingness, I think, is what you're saying, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and just show what the roadmap of how you two could get to know each other might look.
Yeah, because the hiring manager is stressed and busy, and if you sort of lay it out for them, be like, oh, okay, this person's thought it through. They're going to take care of me. This is going to be an easy process. I might as well get in touch with them and talk to them.
And they're serious about the job.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I love your idea about making a job hunting trip, because when you set those dates, and if you can spend a week, I encourage you to do that, because then you can go back to places where you're a candidate and say, I will be in your town on these dates, and I would love to sit down with you while I'm there in person. And that may pull your resume out of the pile and get people, if not to give you a formal job interview, at least to sit down with you informally. It also gives you a great reason to reach out to people you want informational interviews with, to have face-to-face conversations.
Yeah, and building those connections, like Becky said.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, terrific. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Becky, and thank you, Seth. And if you've got a question for Becky, please send her an email. Her email address is Becky, that's BECKY, @maxlist.org. You can also call our listener line. That number is area code 716-JOB-TALK. Or send us a tweet, and our Twitter handle is MaxList. That's MACS_LIST. If we use your question on the show, we'll send you a copy of our new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment, and when we return, I'll talk with this week's guest expert, Kathy Caprino, about top blunders to avoid when you change careers. Are you looking to draw a bigger box for yourself? Seth Godin's Alt MBA workshop is an intensive leadership and management course for change makers with a fire in their belly. This is for people who are itching to level up and make a bigger impact. 4 times a year, the workshop brings together 2 groups of up to 120 leaders. Seth curates the class with a mix of people from different industries and areas of expertise. Here's the end result. You're surrounded by leaders moving to the top of their fields, and you help each other become better change agents. There are no lectures, no videos. You roll up your sleeves and you work in groups with people who are equally in it to win it. It's an intensive 4-week experience. More than 1,000 people from 49 countries have taken the Alt MBA with a 96% completion rate. Seth Godin's Alt MBA is now taking applications for its next session. To find out more, visit altmba.com/findyourdreamjob. Mention this podcast in your application and tell them that I sent you. Now let's turn to this week's guest expert, Kathy Caprino. Kathy Caprino is a career and personal success coach, a writer, a speaker, and a leadership developer dedicated to the advancement of women worldwide. She's also the author of Breakdown Breakthrough and the founder of Alia Communications and the Amazing Career Project. And Kathy is a contributor to Forbes, Huffington Post, and LinkedIn. She joins us today from Stamford, Connecticut. Kathy, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Mac.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. Now, our topic this week are blunders, mistakes people make when switching careers. And we hear on our show, Kathy, and I know you do in your practice, from so many people who want to change careers or sectors. Why can this be difficult for people to make this change?
Oh, well, I speak from experience because I tried to do it after an 18-year corporate career and I bombed out. And thankfully, I've learned how to do it. But the problem is the following. First of all, many of us just land in an area of work or field without really conscious, deliberate intent. And then we spend a few years and we're trying to be successful and, do well and get promoted. And so many people then wake up often in midlife and say, what am I doing? I've achieved the success I wanted, but I'm miserable. And I think, that's the world I work with. And when you've gotten that far along the path, it's number one, very scary to change because you feel like you're going to give up everything. Secondly, what I hear more than anything else is, I know what I don't want, but I don't know what I do want. So it's confusing, it's hard, and we're not really trained to navigate these challenges very well, Mac, I find. Do you find that too?
I do. And I have heard from so many people who describe exactly the experience that you just outlined, which is starting a career, wanting to get going and picking a job, and it's something that interests them, but the years go by and suddenly it's 10 or 15 years later. And as you say, they're not happy. They're ready for a change, but they get stuck about what to do next.
That's it.
Yeah. So Kathy, how do you see people get unstuck? What is the first step someone might take?
Well, actually, Mac, I've developed, after doing a lot of research and interviewing 100 women who've overcome professional crisis, I do have a 5-step model, and I'll just share it with you very quickly. It's number one, step back for an empowered perspective of who you are. So often when you're in a challenging situation or a toxic boss or you've been laid off, you've lost the connection to how great you are. I really believe that everybody on this planet is brilliant and amazing in their own way. So you have to step back and look at who you've been over your lifetime, not just what's at the tip of your nose. The second step is to let go of the thinking patterns and behaviors that keep you stuck. And that's the most important. I'm now a trained therapist after years in corporate, and I use that therapeutic lens in coaching. So many of us engage in habits and patterns that are sabotaging, but we don't know that we're doing it. So we do have to let go of those patterns before we can have a better career and a better life experience. The third is to say yes to your compelling vision. So many people, they might fantasize, like, let me run a bed and breakfast, let me be a best-selling author. But in terms of really doable steps, they're at a loss. But first, we have to say yes to what those compelling visions for our life are. The fourth step is to try it on. This is another thing we just aren't taught to do. So many people will project onto something like, oh, I want to work in a nonprofit, or, oh, academia will be great. Well, I have a lot of clients who want to run from both of those scenarios. Not all nonprofits are created the same. We have to try on, physically, behaviorally, emotionally, financially, spiritually, the directions we're contemplating. And often we'll find out that the fantasy isn't going to make us happy. And then the fifth step is to create it smart. This takes time. And so many people have lost patience. They're in a toxic situation. They want out. They feel unhappy and they want to jump. But this is a process that takes time. So we have to create it with a plan and an accountability buddy if we can.
So I'd love the fact that you've laid out 5 concrete steps that people can take positive action to move forward. And that we've started with that because our topic this week are the pitfalls that people need to avoid, the blunders. And we do this in a constructive way because we want people to find that next career or switch into that new sector with as little pain as possible and to do it as quickly as they can. So let's talk about these blunders, Kathy, these top pitfalls that you see people need to avoid. What's the top one? What's number one on your list?
So the top one is something I've coined the pendulum effect. And here's what it is. For many people, they've waited too long in something that makes them unhappy. And that unhappiness can be on a spectrum from miserable and facing discrimination and harassment like I did in my last job or just feeling like I'm in the wrong thing. But what happens is when we wait too long, then there's pain. And then we want to run away. And so, many people do what I did, which is, after I got laid off after 9/11, it was so brutal that I said, I don't ever want to see the inside of a corporate office again. I never want to put on a suit. I'm done. And I became a therapist. And that in and of itself wasn't a mistake, but the pendulum piece was, I'm going to run to the opposite ends of the earth, from corporate to therapy, because that'll heal all my problems. What happens is only you can heal your problems. The new job, the new industry, the new direction isn't going to necessarily heal it all. So we want to run into something that's very different, away to something that's very different. But what we'll find is if we haven't addressed some of our core issues, it's going to repeat in this new job, in this new career. And some of those core issues are how you communicate, the level of emotionality you have, the toxicity that you're used to that you can actually attract because your boundaries aren't strong, how defensive you are, how not good at, constructive criticism, how alone you are if you don't have a support network, how your leadership skills are, and all of that. So we've got to address that before running away.
So understand what's making you unhappy or what's holding you back so that you don't, so that you can address those problems. And also that'll make you an even better candidate and more successful in whatever it is you choose to do next.
Absolutely. I mean, I call it you're a better energetic match for a very positive future than if you just run away. Then you haven't done the work and you're going to attract more of what's made you unhappy.
Okay. So avoid the pendulum effect. What's another pitfall that you see people get trapped in? Yeah.
So I think the reason so many mid-career people stay stuck is when they're trying to think about what they want, I call it glomming on to the wrong form of work. Let me give you a perfect example. I'll have a lot of corporate people say to me, I'm so done with this nonsense and these politics and this toxic, narcissistic boss. I want to start my own business. Well, Mac, as you know, because you run a number of thriving businesses, I think, running away is not the reason to start a business. So many people also are very risk averse, and it keeps them up every night, all night. The entrepreneurial spirit, it's too scary. So you have to understand who you really are and look at the essence of what you want and then find the right form of it. So that means look at your true talents that you love to use, not the skills that you hate to use. A lot of us are very skilled at things that we actually hate doing. We want to look at those natural talents that make us happy. We want to look at the outcomes that make us feel alive and positive, a positive contributor in the world. We want to look at the environment that we want. I always struggled in the corporate world. I just found it so restrictive. I'm so much happier out on my own in my own business. We want to look at our standards of integrity. We also want to look at the financial compensation we need. And frankly, a lot of people will say, I need $200,000 when in fact it's a lot less than that, but they're just used to that. So they think they have to replicate it. But we have to look at also the flexibility we want, the balance we want in our life. Once we get really clear on that, then we're going to find the right form of it. But we just don't want to assume, I want to be a consultant or an entrepreneur when we really don't know what it is we want to create.
And another version of this, and I think you touched on this a moment ago, Kathy, is the fantasy job. I lived in Boston for 9 years, and New England was full of beds and breakfasts that were started by people fleeing New York City or Washington, D.C. And the reality of serving meals and cleaning toilets and washing, bedding every day.
Thousands of dishes.
Yeah, it's very different than actually being a guest in one of those places. And many people struggle with that and often quit, as you know.
You know, Mac, that's funny. So many people, I have something called a career path assessment. It's a set of questions I think everybody should answer before they make a change. So many people say, I want to launch a bed and breakfast. And I've had a number of clients go and try that on. I want you to go to 5 different bed and breakfasts, interview the owner, what it's like. And every one of them have come back and said, I don't want to do that. But what I do want to do is create events or design blah, blah, blah. So they learn from that try-on process. But I had no idea so many people wanted to start bed and breakfasts.
It's I think it looks glamorous from the outside, maybe.
Exactly.
But I love the fact that you're having people go out and try the job on for size, and that gets back to your earlier point about being clear about what it is you want and what's involved in a job.
Right.
Other blunders, Kathy, that the people should know about so they don't make those same mistakes.
I'm going to offer you the third that I think is so important. I think in general, we are not raised to know ourselves. I think in our society, there's so much pressure to achieve, pressure to live up to and exceed other people's expectations. We don't really know who we are, and we certainly aren't encouraged to resist what our tribe wants for us. And I think you probably know what I mean. In order to be happy, in order to build a career you're so proud of, you have to honor who you innately are. And that's, there are ways to do it. Look at who you were as a teen. I mean, when I look back as an 18-year-old, it's everything I am today. I just didn't recognize how much a writer, a speaker, I'm a singer. I love to be on stage. Young people would come and ask me questions about their life. And I would say to my mom, I'm 18. Why are they asking me these life questions? I think I had kind of a therapeutic ear even then. So who are you? What lights you up? What have you always been? What agitates you? What are your true passions? What's the legacy you want to leave behind? You can't have a great career if you don't know the answers to these questions. And really, it comes down to honor who you are. Make yourself right, not wrong, and pursue what you're most passionate about.
What about finances, Kathy? You touched on this a moment ago when you were talking about expectations for salary and understanding, too, that maybe you don't need as much to earn as much, rather, as you have in the past. How important are finances in switching careers?
They're critical. And, when I first started coaching 11 years ago, I was much more free to say, hey, let's go pursue your passion, do what you love, and the money will follow. Well, that's not necessarily true. You've got to do it in the right way for money to follow. You have to be incredibly savvy today. For instance, if anyone wants to be a coach, my gosh, you are an entrepreneur, you're a business person. And it also involves online marketing and communication and social media. So you must do it in the right way. And another thing I love to share with people, if we have I can't tell you how many people say, I want to write a best-selling book. And they fantasize that they'll be able to leave everything behind and simply write on the beach, in Tulum, Mexico. Most writers, best-selling writers I know, don't do it for the money, and they do many other things. So we can't let our fantasies shape what we're actually doing here. If you really want to start your own thing, or be an author, or be a creative, or be a jazz musician, I think one thing you've got to realize is your art has to be of service to the world. It can't just be because I love to write poems. Is your poetry of service? Is it helping people? So if you really want to do something different, you need a transition plan. It's not going to happen overnight. It's, I say to a lot of new coaches, I train coaches now. Most coaches don't make more than $20,000 the first year, and many of them go broke. You've got to know what's involved and then build a transition plan, including how you're going to fund this change. And when you do it right, then the finances will work for you and with you, not against you.
I love that you're pointing out the value of talking to people who are already doing something and learning from their experience and recognizing that first or second or third year when you're launching a consulting practice or going down the path of self-employment or opening a business, it's probably going to be a lean year or two, and you've got to plan for that.
100%. And I have a quick anecdote. When I was first thinking of being a therapist, I did interview a few people, but you know who I chose? Really wealthy therapists who were making over 100,000, who had best-selling books and didn't need insurance. Well, awesome, but that's only one part of the spectrum. I should have interviewed 20 other people working at social service agencies, not making a lot of money, or people who left the field. So don't let your research just be a self-fulfilling, prophecy that I'm going to be a millionaire. Make sure you're interviewing a wide spectrum of people and you're looking at it with your eyes wide open.
And finally, I know another blunder that you've written about on your blog is the timetable, just having realistic expectations of the amount of time it takes to make these changes. Tell us more about that, Kathy.
Yeah, another blunder I see, and a lot of this is coming from my Forbes post that has 571,000 views and growing. People give up too quickly. I was talking to a Tony Robbins coach years ago, and he said, I don't care what my clients want. I said, you don't? Well, what do you care about? He said, what they'll commit to, what they'll give up everything for. So many people start on a direction, and if it doesn't pan out in 6 weeks, 6 months, even people on social media, I think I'll try this. And if in 2 months they're not generating revenue from it, they give up. That's not going to work. You're going to fail. You've got to choose a direction that has so much juice for you that you will stay in it and give up everything for it, really. Or at least give it a sufficient amount of time, a few years, let's say, given what direction you're talking about, where you're willing to go through the bumpy road, because it is bumpy, isn't it, Mac? Change is bumpy.
Yeah,
it's not all a walk in the park.
I know. I've talked on this show before. If I can describe my career in a way that makes it sound glamorous and unrelentlessly successful, and you think it's a 45-degree angle, but every career has ups and downs. There are always going to be valleys as well as peaks.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you've got to have the perseverance to stick through it until you get to your goal.
Great. Well, tell us, great advice, Kathy. Now, tell us what's coming up next for you.
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing I just love to talk about is I do have a course. It's a career transformation course, but really people change personally as well in every way. And it's called the Amazing Career Project. And I launch that every fall and every spring. So we do have a launch coming up, and it's amazing. And it's an online course with a wonderful group component where people are helping each other online and on Facebook. And it's 16 weeks with 16 videos and homework assignments. So that's at the amazingcareerproject.com. No the. And anyone who loves group support, who wants a nice process that's going to get them to their goal, I hope they'll check it out.
Well, terrific. We'll be sure to include a link to that in the show notes. And I know it's our pleasure. And Kathy, I know people can also find you online at your website, which is kathycaprino.com. That's Kathy with a K and Caprino with a C.
That's it.
All right. Well, Kathy, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me, Matt. Great to talk to you.
You too. Take care. We're back in the Max List studio with Becky, Jessica, and Ben. And I enjoyed that conversation a lot.
That was great.
Kathy. Yeah, it was. What are some key points you all heard Kathy make? Ben, it looks like you want to go first. You're cutting in front of Becky here?
Don't start a bed and breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to.
Tell us more about that,
It
Becky.
looks so quaint and lovely.
I love breakfast. I love having a garden and cutting flowers and
So
fresh
maybe it is
linens.
perfect for you. Maybe you're the key demographic for the starting the bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
I think
also
that's the
hate
customer
doing laundry.
demographic, not the owner
I know.
demographic.
It's
But
from the
that's-
customer's perspective, it's this is wonderful.
But that's where if you like cutting the flowers
Yeah.
and somebody else likes doing laundry, you just have to
Yeah.
find that person who
Yeah.
does the things that you don't like to do.
For sure.
And then make a partnership, and then it might work out.
That's what Kathy was saying about keeping your eyes open, right? It's
Maybe that's what she meant. We can interpret that way.
Seriously though, the piece of advice you offered that I liked the most was watching out for the pendulum effect of just like running away from
That was huge.
the complete opposite of what you're doing now.
I think we've all done that.
Everyone's done that in one way or another.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the interesting thing too is employers end up hiring using the pendulum effect too. Like,
how do you see that happening?
Yeah.
well, I think a lot of times, like the hiring decision, if they've been burned by the last employee who had that job, like that's what they're most concerned about, avoiding that situation again, right? Even if that's not like core to the job or anything else like that. Like everyone, you get burned and like you just want to do the complete opposite. It's human nature.
I was just going to say, I think it's inherent in humans. So yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I liked what she was saying about the pendulum definitely resonated with me, but I forget her exact words that she used, but your passion isn't the only thing that you should follow. And that is something that, I don't know, people say as just a beautiful sentiment that is not helpful at all. And I remember when I was trying to ask folks for feedback of what, when I was trying to figure out my own path, asking people, and they were like, just do what makes you happy. And that doesn't help at all. And it doesn't always, and what she was saying is that that doesn't make the money follow, that following your passion doesn't automatically mean that there's going to be money there. And I really liked what she said about making sure that your passion is of service. So obviously do things that you enjoy, but that's not the only thing, and make sure that it's sustainable and that it does match your strengths as well, and that it is giving back to the world and is being of service for others. I think that was, I don't know. I really kind of related to the pendulum effect of, I heard that for so long. And so now I hate that piece of advice of do what you're passionate about. So it's, I think it's good.
It's an important part, but it's not the only part of figuring out what you need to do next.
Well, I think that's not the way to find out what to do.
Right.
Definitely use that as a guiding post of, find out what makes you happy, but then also those other, there are a lot of other things that go into that. So
she had some very detailed tips about the steps you should go through to figure out what you want to do next.
Yeah, I liked those too. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be like a holistic approach. It can't just be, this is the one thing, I'm just going to go full bore after this, without really thinking it through and understanding yourself. I also really liked what she said about understanding your sort of core challenges. Like if you were really stressed out at your last job and you don't address that sort of boundary issue,
I like that a lot.
It's going to follow you, right?
Yeah.
It's going to continue.
Yep.
That dream job isn't going to magically make you a different person.
You have to do the hard work to I loved that.
Yeah, that was important. I think that's really important to think about when you're considering a career change. It's like, you're imagining this career, but it's still you in that job, and how's that going to look?
Yeah, and the entrepreneurial side of things of, just because you don't want to work in a corporate environment doesn't mean you can start a business.
And like starting a business is so easy, right?
Right, and that may not be the right fit for you. Like, maybe the corporate world isn't, but that doesn't mean that that's the automatic next step.
I loved her point about time. Because when I see people who've made successful career changes or moved to new sectors, and I've certainly experienced this myself, it doesn't happen overnight. It can take months or even several years. Yeah. When I wanted to move from Boston to Oregon, it took me about 8 months of conversations.
It always takes a lot longer than you expect and plan. And
And in the 1990s, I was just determined to get a job in the office of the governor of Oregon, and it took me about 3 years. But I wasn't looking that whole time. I never lost sight of that goal. I always had a day job, but I thought about what can I do to move this interest along. So when an opportunity presented itself, I was well positioned. But whether it takes time, and we have to manage for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Well, thank you all, and thank you, Kathy, for joining us this week. That was a terrific conversation, and thank you, our listeners, for downloading this week's episode of Find Your Dream Job. If you like what you hear, please sign up for our free weekly newsletter. In every issue, we give you the key points of that week's show. And we also include links to all the resources mentioned. And you get a transcript of the full episode as well. If you subscribe to the newsletter now, we'll send you our new guide, the top career podcasts of 2017. Discover all the podcasts that can help you find a great job and get the career you want. Get your free newsletter and career podcast guide today. Go to maxlist.org/podcast. And join us next Wednesday when our special guest will be Jen Swanson, host of the Communications Diva podcast. She'll talk to us about why you're not getting a job interview after you send in a resume. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job.